What's up everyone, how are you all? Today we are back with another blazing Naruto story. What if Naruto was trained by Beerus and became the god of destruction of Shinobi? If you enjoy then please like, share and do comments. The Valley of the End. Boom. The power struggle ended in a spectacular explosion, sending debris and chakra in all directions as well as violently shaking the Valley of the End. When the smoke cleared, the central part of the valley was now a large crater that was slowly filling with water. In the center of the crater were two people. Sayuri Uchiha stood victoriously over the downed form of her former teammate, Naruto, who now had a nasty hole on the right side of his chest. Multiple points all over his body were bleeding, mainly his chest, head and mouth. He was barely clinging onto his life, even with Kyuubi trying to heal him. Sayuri looked down at Naruto, her Sharingan staring right into Naruto's half-open, cerulean blue eyes. Nothing will stop me from killing Itachi and avenging the Uchiha clan. Not even you, Naruto, began Sayuri. Naruto was in pain all over. He could barely move. Sayuri. She then began charging up another Chidori in her hand, at last. Now, I can complete the next step in getting my revenge. She kneeled down over him and lifted up her lighting-filled hand. Naruto's eyes widened. Wait. Stab. The second Chidori, this time, nailing the left side of his heart. Gah! He screamed and began convulsing on the ground, his eyes showing a look of pain and betrayal. After a few seconds, he stopped moving and his eyes began to slowly close. No. Sayuri. It thought. Through his slowly closing eyes, he saw Sayuri walking away from the crater and off to find Orochimaru and the Sound Village. He slowly lifted his arm up, almost like he was trying to reach for her but to no avail. His arm soon dropped back down after a few seconds. Meanwhile, Kyuubi was trying to heal all of Naruto's wounds but to no avail. His heart was slowly giving out and despite Kyuubi's healing powers, it wasn't enough to save him from certain death. The damage has been done. Damn it all. Looks like this is the end, kid. I hope you knew what you were doing. Soon, darkness took over them. Unfortunately, neither of them noticed the tall, shadowy figure approaching them. 1 hour later, with Sayuri, en route to the hidden Sound Village. Slowly making her way towards Rice Country, Sayuri was calmly walking through Fire Country's surrounding forests, contemplating what had happened the last few hours since her defection from Konoha. She left the village after Sakura tried to convince her to stay, which she ended up getting knocking out in the process. She had already made a lot of ground before Naruto and some of her other fellow rookies intercepted her. However, most of the rescue team ended up falling behind to deal with the Sound Five, save for Naruto, who continued to chase after her, eventually leading to their battle at the Valley of the End and finally, Naruto's death by her hands. Finally, I gained more power and I'm out of that worthless village. Now there is nothing to stop me from coming after you, Itachi. Sigh. At least Naruto's death was worth it. Oh, if only she knew. She may have succeeded in finally defecting from the Hidden Leaf, but there was still one single thing she hadn't accomplished yet, and if she had just taken the time to check and make sure back in the Valley of the End, then she would have realized what she had ultimately failed at acquiring. Her normal Sharingan didn't morph into the Mangekyo Sharingan like she thought it would. That means that Naruto's death was all for nothing, and it would come back to haunt her in the years to come. Several hours later, just outside the Valley of the End, running through the raining forest, Kakashi and his dog Summons, Pakun, were trying to reach the valley fast as they can to try and find Naruto and or Sayuri if she was still in the area. They made their way through the surrounding forest and eventually reached the entrance to the Valley of the End. What they found was not what they were expecting. Fallen and uprooted trees, cracks in the earth and a rather large crater in the center. The valley looked like it had a bomb go off from within. The hell happened here? Kakashi thought. They walked towards the crater, wondering what had caused it and all the damage around him. Kakashi was also wondering, where was Naruto and Sayuri in all this? Pakun, can you sense anything here? Asked Kakashi. I can't really sense anything, said Pakun. The rain is making it really hard to pick up anything. Wait. I can sense someone in the crater. It's Naruto. He's down there in the crater, yelled Pakun. They made their way down the side of the crater, looking for Naruto. Kakashi was concerned that Pakun sensed Naruto down here in the crater. If he was here, then it could only mean something was wrong. Kakashi then noticed a figure in the middle of the crater. Fearing the worst, he and Pakun slowly walked towards it. When the figure came into full view, Kakashi's eyes widened in horror. There, lying in a pool of blood-tainted water was the motionless form of Naruto. Broken, beaten, dead. "Naruto!" yelled Kakashi. He ran over to Naruto's side and put his fingers to his neck. There was no pulse. "No, Naruto. Damn it, I was too late," thought Kakashi. He looked at the rest of Naruto's body and saw just how banged up he was. Parts of his jumpsuit were shredded, where deep cuts were found. His head was bleeding from the side. His chest had not one but two fist-sized holes on it, the center one undoubtedly piercing his heart. Kakashi was trying to hold back his tears. He knew that the holes in Naruto's chest were caused by Chidori, the same move he personally taught to Sayuri. Seeing the damage done to Naruto made him realize how terrible of a sensei he was to Team 7. He completely ignored both Naruto and Sakura in favor of teaching Sayuri, having only taught the two of them only basic team exercises and tree walking. He taught Sayuri some advanced fire jutsu, chakra control exercises and finally the Chidori, an A-ranked assassination technique. He had intended for it to be a last resort attack against Gaara back in the Chunin exams, but instead Sayuri used it to kill Naruto, her own teammate. "I'm so sorry, Naruto. I was a terrible sensei to you and Sakura. All I taught the two of you were just basic exercises yet. I personally trained Sayuri alone instead of all three of you. I went against my own motto, the same one I told the three of you on our first day. And now you lost your life because of my failure as your teacher." "Kakashi, is he?" "Yes, Pakun. He really is dead. And it's all my fault," said Kakashi as he picked up Naruto's lifeless body. "It wasn't your fault, Kakashi. It was that Sayuri student of yours who did this," said Pakun. "Yet she used the same technique that I-Personally taught her. If I hadn't taught her that jutsu, then maybe Naruto wouldn't have lost his life trying to get her back," yelled Kakashi. Pakun sighed. He knew that Kakashi taught the girl that assassination jutsu, but he wasn't the one who dealt the killing blow to Naruto. But he could see why Kakashi was blaming himself. "Let's head back to Konoha. There's nothing else left to us here," said Kakashi as he started to walk back to the hidden leaf. "But wait, what about Sayuri? Shouldn't we go after her?" asked Pakun, walking beside him. "No, she chose to abandon her village and comrades. As far as I'm concerned, she is not a shinobi of the leaf." "Not anymore," replied Kakashi. The two began their slow trek back to the hidden leaf village. "I'm sorry, Naruto, Minato-sensei. Forgive me." He can only imagine the sorrow that would inevitably engulf Tsunade and the others once he returned. Location unknown. A short, blonde-haired figure was lying on the ground in the middle of an empty field. Suddenly, the figure began moving slightly. Naruto slowly opened his eyes as he regained consciousness. Kyuubi, within the seal, was also waking up as well. What the hell happened? Where am I? He thought. He noticed that he was sitting on a field of teal grass surrounded by flora of all kinds. In the distance, he saw what looked like a massive, hollowed-out tree sitting in what he assumed was center of this entire area. "What is this place?" he thought. He looked up and noticed many spherical shapes dotting the bright pink skies. Everything about this place was a mystery to Naruto. Now the question is, how did he get here? The last things he remembered were Sayuri stabbing him in the chest with her Chidori and Kyuubi's last words before everything went dark. Sayuri. The very thought of her brought up nothing but sadness and anger within Naruto. How could she do that to him? Why did she do it? Did she not realize that Orochimaru was just going to use her? Was she that dead set on getting revenge that she would screw over everyone in the leaf, even her own friends? Naruto clenched his fists tightly. He wasn't mad, no, he was just a little, absolutely livid. After everything they've been through, from their first team meeting to the sea-turned-a-ranked mission in Wave to all the times they hung out together as friends, as comrades, and she throws it all away just to gain power? Something within Naruto's mind suddenly snapped at that moment. His eyes widened slightly and his jaws clenched tighter than they already were. Blood began seeping from his already tightly clenched hands. The ground around him started shaking. He was leaking so much killing intent that anyone who would have felt it would drop dead instantly. "Naruto, calm down." The amount of killing intent that was radiating from Naruto was starting to affect even Kyuubi. That heartless, Backstabbing, traitorous bitch. He yelled and the ground beneath him started to crack under the pressure. Dirt and loose rocks around him began to float upwards as his energy began soaring to greater heights. Naruto was breathing very heavily as the land shook underneath him. His hair even started to float upwards and began to start glowing a much brighter shade of blonde. After a few more seconds, Naruto let out a rage-induced roar. As he let it all out, his hair suddenly glowed a bright golden color and a bright yellow aura began to form around him. Ki suddenly erupted from his body in shockwaves in all directions, completely decimating the ground below him. Most of his jacket was burned away by the initial burst of power. His muscles expanded and his hair was now spiked upwards while leaving a few bangs covering his forehead. His eyes also went from a deep cerulean blue to a bright, piercing cyan shade. And pretty sure all of you can guess what just happened. After a few more seconds, the golden aura surrounding him faded away as Naruto slowly reverted back to his old blonde-haired, blue-eyed self. He was breathing heavily as he dropped down to his hands and knees. What was that power? What just happened to me? He thought. Interesting, so I was right about you after all. Naruto looked up and saw a rather tall and thin figure floating not too far away from him. He had long, snow-white hair that stood straight up and seemingly defied gravity. His clothing consisted of maroon robes, a black cuirass with white and orange diamond decorations and a bright blue sash around his waist. Around his neck was a large blue halo. He also wore black high-heeled shoes with white spats. In his right hand was a large blue scepter with a golden top that had an unusual ringed gem floating above it. "Who are you?" asked Naruto. The being looked at him with a rather amused expression. "Ah, where are my manners? Allow me to introduce myself. My name is Whis." "Whis? I've never heard of you before," said Naruto as he stood back up. "I wasn't expecting you to. The people of your world aren't aware of beings such as myself. Only a select few people actually know of my existence and now, you're one of them," said Whis as he hovered over the ground. Naruto raised an eyebrow. "Wait, beings? You mean there are others here as well?" asked Naruto. Whis nodded. "Yes, we aren't alone here. My student, Beerus, is also here but he's currently sleeping," responded Whis. Naruto was about to say something before Whis interrupted him. "Yes, you will meet him soon," said Whis. That silenced Naruto. "Before we discussing anything further, do you know why you're here?" asked Whis. Naruto shook his head. "I was observing your battle with that raven-haired girl and—" "Wait, you were there the whole time? I didn't even sense your presence," exclaimed Naruto. "Oh, you wouldn't have been able to sense my presence regardless. My power is something else entirely," said Whis. Naruto was about to say something when Whis cut him off. "Anyways," continued Whis, "while the two of you were locked in battle, I sensed a rather faint energy signature emanating off of you. It was small, but it was there. You seem to be the only one in that entire world to possess it as far as what I've seen so far." "Energy? You mean my chakra?" asked Naruto. Whis shook his head. "No, not this chakra, but ki," said Whis. Naruto raised an eyebrow. "Ki? What's that?" asked Naruto. "Ki is the tangible life force within every being, with its major focus being in the center of the body. By drawing it out, an individual is able to manipulate it and use it outside the body in a multitude of ways. You can use it to enhance your speed, endurance, and even use it formulate your own ki-based techniques," explained Whis. Naruto's eyes widened a little. "Wow, you can really do that?" asked Naruto, curiously. Instead of explaining it with words, Whis just held up his hand. Soon, a small, light blue orb formed in the center of Whis' palm. "Yes, I can indeed," said Whis. "Cool. Wait, you said that you sensed a faint energy signature coming from me. Does that mean I can do that too?" asked Naruto. "With some practice, yes," replied Whis. "I'm a little surprised that you had no idea about ki. Everyone in the universe should have some sort of knowledge about it. But, seeing as how your world uses a different means of energy, I can see why," said Whis. "What do you mean?" Naruto asked. "The people of your world don't seem to have any knowledge of ki at all. You were the only one in that entire world that had even the faintest ki signature, Which brings me to reason why you're here, explained Whis. And why is that? Asked Naruto, wanting to know how he ended up in this world. The oracle fish that resides here informed me that another powerful warrior would soon appear in one of the worlds of this universe, the world in question being yours, and would not only save his own world from total destruction, but also be a worthy of challenging Beerus himself. And now, after so many years of waiting, it seems like I finally found who I was looking for, said Whis, smiling. Naruto was shocked. He was the so-called super warrior Whis was looking for? Wait a second, hold on, I'm no super warrior. And what do you mean, saving my world from darkness? What kind of power could I possibly possess? Whis held up his hand and silenced him. One question at a time, Naruto Uzumaki, said Whis, which startled Naruto a little bit. I didn't even tell him my name and yet he knows it? Just who is this guy? Suddenly, he was pulled into his mindscape. Mindscape. Naruto appeared in front of the Kyuubi's cage. Kyuubi, what's going on? Listen, something strange is going on here. I can't sense any chakra signature from this guy or anywhere else in the area. I know, I can't sense anything either. This place. Do you know where we are? No, I've never seen this place before either. You have to be careful. Alright, I will. With that, Naruto exited his mindscape. Had fun talking to your tenant? Asked Whis. Naruto's eyes widened. How did you? It's not hard to distinguish two different sources of energy within one person, you know, said Whis. Naruto was about to retort, but couldn't find the right words, so he stayed silent. So back to what I was telling you earlier, I believe that you are the warrior the oracle was talking about, said Whis. But, why me? What makes me so special? Asked Naruto. What makes you special, you ask? Your little show earlier when you woke up. What you have awakened was a power that hasn't been seen in thousands of years, not since the last wielders of that same power. It grants the user a massive boost in all attributes like strength, speed, agility, endurance and so on. It is a power known as Super Saiyan. Super Saiyan? I've never heard of a bloodline like that. What clan is it from? Asked Naruto. Oh, it's not from a clan in your world. It's not even of human origin. It comes from an alien race known as the Saiyans, began Whis. Saiyans were a powerful warrior race that had a lust for battle and they got stronger with each and every battle they fought in. They looked similar to humans except they grew tails which allowed them to transform into massive apes, called Uzarus, whenever there was a full moon were once had a very large population before most of them died in the destruction of their home world. Fortunately, a select few survived and lived on. Okay, so what does this have to do with me? Asked Naruto, curiously. Since Naruto was able to go Super Saiyan, I've made a few changes in the origins of his clan to try to explain how he was able to power up like that. A lot of things. For one, you and your clan, the Uzumaki, are descendants of the Saiyan race. Naruto's eyes widened. No way. His clan originated from another world. How is that possible? Wait, if his clan truly did indeed originate from a different race entirely, then how did the Uzumaki clan come to be? If the Mai clan originated from another world, then how did we end up here then? Asked Naruto. From what I know, Whis began explaining, one of the surviving Saiyans ended up having an offspring that eventually found its way here into your world long ago. The offspring eventually had kids of their own and as time went on, your numbers grew and eventually, your little group would become what is known today as the Uzumaki clan. Naruto was having a hard time taking in all of this. It's not every day that you find out that your clan descended from a warrior race. Wait a second, how does Whis know about this if it happened a long time ago? How exactly do you know all of this? Asked Naruto, curiously. Let's just say that I've been around longer than most can say for themselves, said Whis with an eye smile. Naruto raised an eyebrow. Ukai. So, you mentioned that one of the surviving Saiyans had an offspring, right? Asked Naruto, changing the subject. Whis nodded. Who was the Saiyan then? Just look into this orb. You'll see just who he is, said Whis. Naruto looked into the orb and was immediately bombarded with images of death and destruction. Every image he saw was filled with cities on fire, countless people running for their lives and some images were of whole planets blowing up. It was nothing but chaos and destruction and finally, Naruto saw him, the Saiyan he and his clan descended from. He was a very tall and bulky man, wearing baggy white pants with a red sash over it. He wore golden boots and gauntlets with gems on them. On his upper body, he wore only a golden necklace with a gem similar to his other clothing. His hair was a yellowish green with spikes in all directions, similar to Naruto's transformation, as well as blank white eyes. He was floating above a seemingly abandoned and ruined city, looking down at it with a very maniacal smile on his face. Then, Naruto saw others charging at his aunt's store. He wasn't entirely sure who they were, but he had a feeling that these might be the other surviving Saiyans, judging by their human-like appearances and powerful auras. That's when an animalistic roar occurred, followed by a scream of "Kakarot." Naruto saw his aunt's store charge at the incoming group right as the images faded away. "That Saiyan, who was he?" asked Naruto, looking back at Whis. "That man you saw just now. He is known as Broly, the legendary Super Saiyan," said Whis. "Legendary Super Saiyan?" Naruto asked. Legendary Super Saiyan is more than just a title. It's actually an unstable variation of the normal Super Saiyan form. "Normal Super Saiyan form?" interrupted Naruto. "Yes. I'll explain that later," said Whis before continuing his previous explanation. "Anyways, it's almost like a mutation of sorts, causing the user to bulk up considerably without hindering their overall speed, as well as giving them a near-endless supply of energy. The user's power would also grow significantly more powerful over time. In Broly's case, it made him almost unstoppable during his time. It took the combined effort of all the surviving Saiyans and their allies to beat Broly, but even then, he came close to killing all of them and even managed to return again before he was finally defeated once and for all," explained Whis. "He was that powerful?" asked Naruto. "Indeed he was. Entire planets have fallen to his might. He was a monster of a man, and yet, somehow, he managed to have an offspring at some point in his life and— well, you know the rest," finished Whis. "Well, this certainly has been a hell of a day so far for Naruto. Finding out that your clan originated from a different world wasn't something he was expecting to be true. Then, he is told that he is the fabled, super warrior, that Whis has been looking for all this time." Naruto's brain was basically out of whack with all of this new information. "Okay," began Naruto, "before I end up losing my mind because of all this, let's just start from the beginning and discuss why I'm here and what'll be happening soon." "Alright, let's begin then," responded Whis. "Okay, how did you find me?" asked Naruto. "I was roaming around in your world when I sensed that faint key signature that I told you about earlier. I traced that signature to the area where you battled that raven-haired girl and brought you here to my world just before you blacked out from your injuries," said Whis. "Okay then. Thanks, I guess. Next question. Can you explain what this oracle fish told you?" asked Naruto. "The oracle said that a powerful super warrior would soon be born somewhere in your world. That warrior would go on to stop a major conflict that could potentially tear your world apart, which is something that Beerus and I can't allow to happen," explained Whis. Naruto raised an eyebrow. "What do you mean can't allow?" asked Naruto. Whis sighed. "I supposed I have some explaining to do." Naruto was anxious to hear this. "Beerus and I are the gods of this universe." "What? Wait. Hold on. You're telling me that you and Beerus are gods?" Whis nodded with a smile. Naruto couldn't even find the words to speak at the moment. "Yes, I know. It's not what you thought it would be, right?" Naruto just shook his head. "What I'm saying is true. Together, Beerus and I are in charge of maintaining the balance of this universe. Beerus's job specifically is to destroy planets. By destroying planets, new ones are born from the remnants of those that were eliminated. That being said, our universe stays in balance so long as this cycle keeps going. Before creation comes destruction. It's as simple as that," explained Whis. Naruto stayed silent throughout the explanation. Now, Whis began once more. "This leads into why I had brought you here in the first place. Not only are you the warrior the oracle told me about, but that whole prophecy also ties into what Beerus and I do as the gods of this universe. You are essentially helping us in keeping this universe balanced by going on to save your world in the near future. Normally, Beerus would just go in and destroy the planet entirely, but because the balance of your world has not yet been affected, it would be better if I send you back to prevent it, seeing as it's your homeworld to begin with. Does that make sense?" finished Whis. Naruto thought about all the information he was just told about before nodding. "Excellent. Now that all hows and whys are out of the way, Let us proceed to my home where your training will begin, and if you're lucky, I might even introduce you to Beerus, if he ever decides to wake up anytime soon." With that, Whis tapped the floor with his scepter and the two warped away. Naruto's training has officially begun. Meanwhile, back in Konoha, front gates, about a day after the failed retrieval mission, Kakashi made it back to Konoha. He approached the main gates and was greeted by Izumo and Kotetsu, the immortal gate guards. As he got closer, the two gate guards were shocked at the figure in Kakashi's arms. "Kakashi, is that?" "It is, Kotetsu. It's really him," said Kakashi in a sad voice. "What the hell happened to the poor kid?" asked Izumo. "Betrayal," replied Kakashi. He then proceeded to Shunshin towards Tsunade's office. "Damn, poor Naruto," said Izumo. "I know. I mean, I can't imagine what he went through before he died," said Kotetsu. The two gate guards never had any qualms with Naruto. They even helped him hide from mobs when he was a little kid and even assisted him in some of his pranks. They hoped that he could finally rest in peace. Tsunade's office. Tsunade was very nervous. She had sent Naruto, Shikamaru, Neji, Kiba, Choji and Lee out to retrieve one Sayuri Uchiha some time ago, and Naruto was the only one who has yet to return. Fearing the worst, she sent out Kakashi to go and find him, knowing that Naruto probably went further ahead to try and catch up to Sayuri. It had been a few hours already and still no word from Kakashi or Naruto had been heard yet. Suddenly, there was a large puff of smoke in the room and she sensed that it was Kakashi. "Kakashi, you're back. Where's Na?" she gasped as she saw what was in Kakashi's arms. The blonde hair. The orange jumpsuit. "It can't be. Naruto? I'm sorry, Lady Tsunade. I didn't make it in time," said Kakashi. Tsunade said nothing. She just stared at the corpse of her once-living surrogate grandson. It couldn't be. First Nawaki and Dan, now Naruto was taken from her as well. Tears began welling up in her eyes. "How did this happen?" she asked quietly. "Sayuri. She killed him," replied Kakashi, sadness evident in his voice. "Leave him here. I'll get him prepped for his burial. You go and call the others, including Gaara and his siblings, and tell them to go to the top of Hokage Mountain. We'll be burying him there," said Tsunade. Kakashi nodded and left Naruto's body in Tsunade's arms before leaving the room. Just seconds after he left, Tsunade immediately began crying uncontrollably. 30 minutes later, Hokage Mountain. All members of the Rookie 12, including those in the retrieval mission, they've recovered at this point, and their senseis as well as Shizune and the Sand siblings made it to the top of Hokage Mountain. Most of them were oblivious to why they were called forth by Tsunade, but some, mainly Shikamaru, Neji, Hinata, Shino, and Gaara, had a bad feeling about what was going on, judging by the very noticeably sad tone in Kakashi's voice when he visited all of them. "What do you think Lady Tsunade called us for?" asked Ino. "I don't know, but I got a bad feeling about this," said Shikamaru. "Why?" asked Kiba. "The way Kakashi's voice sounded when he came to get us." "Did anyone else notice?" said Shikamaru. "Yes, he seemed very depressed, as if something bad happened," responded Shino. Asuma, Kurenai and Guy were also very concerned about Kakashi. If Kakashi acted any differently than he normally would, something was definitely wrong. As they continued walking, they noticed Kakashi and Tsunade standing next to each other in front of a body. Everyone was immediately worried about what was going on. However, as they got close enough, all of them were completely shocked at what was in front of them. There, on the ground, covered in deep cuts and dried blood, was Naruto. "Naruto!" yelled Shikamaru, Neji, Lee. "What happened to him?" yelled Shikamaru. "Betrayal," said Kakashi bitterly. "What do you mean?" asked Shizune. "He must have gone ahead of you guys because Sayuri, she killed him." They had no idea what to think of this. Just hours ago, as of this chapter, they were all part of the retrieval mission to get Sayuri back. Unfortunately, they had to retreat back to the village due to injuries sustained in battle with the Sound Five. Granted, they did manage to defeat them, but they were unsuccessful in bringing Sayuri back. However, they hadn't expected Naruto to have made it farther than they had. They also weren't expecting him to get killed as a result. "All of you except those involved in the retrieval mission, leave," said Tsunade. The rest of them nodded before leaving down the path of Hokage Mountain and back to the village. Tsunade sighed and turned towards the remaining rookies. "What is it you want with us, Lady Tsunade?" asked Shino. Shikamaru, Choji, Kiba and Lee were also wondering the same thing. I'm sure all of you are aware of the way the villagers looked at Naruto, correct? Asked Tsunade. They all nodded. Well, there is a reason for that. And it has something to do with the Kyuubi, said Shikamaru. Yes. How did you know? Asked Tsunade. I had a hunch at first, but it was confirmed when Naruto himself told me about it, he said. He knew, yelled Kakashi. Shikamaru nodded. How? Asked Tsunade. According to what he told me, he had met the Kyuubi years ago. I don't know when exactly, but he did at some point, explained Shikamaru. I never thought that he would have to deal with such a burden, said Neji. As do I. But I don't get it. If he is the container, then why do the villagers think of him as the Kyuubi itself? Asked Lee. I guess most people can't grow past blind hatred, said Tsunade. Kiba looked down at that statement. For a long time, he was one of the many people who looked down at Naruto. However, as time went on, he got to know the real Naruto, not the demon that most of the villagers make him out to be. What's wrong, Kiba? Asked Shino. I used to be one of the many people who hated Naruto for housing the Kyuubi. But I got to know him over time and I finally realized that he wasn't the demon that the villagers thought he was. We didn't have the greatest time growing up together, so I was planning to make it up to him, but now I can't, finished Kiba with a somber tone in his voice. Tsunade was actually surprised at this. She wasn't expecting someone to actually let go of their hatred of Naruto. She was glad that there were at least some people who had brains in the village. I was one as well, but I never really tried being mean to Naruto, since I got to know him as well, said Choji. Shikamaru smiled at this. He was glad that his longtime friend had the same impression of Naruto as Kiba did. Sigh. I wish the Ino and Sakura thought the same way, said Shikamaru. I highly doubt that anything we say will ever change their minds about Naruto, especially Sakura, said Shino. Kakashi sighed. Sakura has always had it in for Naruto, even before they were placed on Team 7. From what he knew, Sakura seemed to berate him and physically abuse him on what was probably a regular basis. He had hoped that she would grow out when they became a team, but he was wrong. She hadn't changed at all since leaving the academy. Kakashi clenched his fists. He wasn't going to tolerate this behavior any longer. Excuse me, Lady Tsunade. I'm going to have a chat with Sakura, said Kakashi. Take your time, Kakashi. Make sure she hears every word, said Tsunade. Kakashi nodded before leaving towards Sakura's residence. You think he'll succeed in changing her views? Asked Kiba, curiously. Probably. Knowing him, he won't stop until progress is at least made, finished Tsunade. So what now? Asked Choji. We'll be holding his funeral soon. For now, all of you can go home. When everything is ready, I will summon you guys back, got it? The 5 rookies nodded before heading back to their respective homes. Tsunade looked back at Naruto's body before sighing once more. I wish you were still here, Naruto. I hope you can finally rest in peace after all you've been through. In the days following, over the next few days, things in Konoha would never be the same. Naruto was buried alongside his parents, not far from the memorial stone, which now had his name on it. Afterwards, his heritage was revealed to the entire village. His real identity, his parents, everything. At this point, pretty much everybody's opinion of him had changed. Shopkeepers who had kicked him out of their stores in the past were ashamed of themselves, as many of them were classmates with Minato and Kushina. Teachers at the academy, besides Iruka, promised to teach all of their students from now on. Naruto's funeral service was very interesting to say the least. Much of the villagers were present as well as the remaining rookie 12 and Gaara and his siblings. Many shared their voices over the course of the service, but a few stood out, mainly Shikamaru and Gaara. Flashback, Naruto's funeral service. Storm clouds were gathered in the skies of Konoha as they rained down on the village. Shikamaru stood in front of Naruto's grave, a look of sadness in his eyes. I'd known you for years. We grew up in the academy together. I always knew that there was something beneath that happy-go-lucky attitude of yours. You put with this village's bullshit for years and yet, you always managed to have a smile on your face. You had this aura of positivity around you even at the worst of times. But now it's gone. You lost your life trying to bring someone back to the village, someone who cared about nothing but herself these days. Maybe if things had gone differently, then maybe you would have still been here. I'm sorry, Naruto. With that he walked back to the crowd, ignoring most of the people around him as he walked away. The next person to come up was Gaara. Following the Sand Sound invasion, Gaara's perspective on things changed significantly. He no longer had a thirst for blood. Instead, he took Naruto's words to heart and it allowed him to slowly repair his relationship with his family as well as his home village, Suna. I knew what it was like to be feared and hated by my own village. You and I have more in common than most people can say for themselves. I don't think I have never met anyone as unique as you. You helped me see things in an entirely new light after the invasion. You gave me a new purpose in life, to form bonds with others and protect them to the best of my ability. Unfortunately, your death has prevented me from returning the favor. We might not have known each other for very long, but I already consider you a friend. I can only hope that you can finally rest in peace in the afterlife. With that he walked back in with his siblings, Temari and Kankuro. They left the village and returned to Suna soon after. End flashback. After the funeral service, the overall mood in the village was very gloomy. It didn't have that same lively feeling like it used to have. Not anymore. And it would remain like that for a very long time. However, events would soon unfold, setting the stage for what could be yet another disastrous war that sweep across the Shinobi nations like a wildfire. And among all of that, something very unexpected would shake Konoha to its core. Something from beyond the stars. 7 years later, over the next 7 years, Naruto would endure a hellish training regimen to master his newly awakened power as well as getting to know more about his Saiyan heritage. Among his training methods, he did things like improving his control over ki, learning how to regulate his power output when powered up to Super Saiyan, developing an actual fighting style, which revolves around mostly speed, precision and stopping power. And he even learned how to generate the same attacks that Broly used in his time, such as the Eraser Cannon and Gigantic Meteor. Both were very difficult for him to learn at first since both attacks required a lot of ki to use before launching them, but he got the hang of it after a while. Along the way, he also learned some of the moves that the other surviving Saiyans utilized. Thanks to Whis, Naruto was now able to use some of the Saiyans' most powerful attacks such as Goku's Kamehameha, Vegeta's Big Bang attack and so on and so forth. Whis was rather generous when he decided to train him just like he did with Goku and Vegeta many years prior. According to Whis, a more diverse arsenal prevents over-reliance from becoming a problem in the long run. Naruto agreed with that reason as he also believed that a larger array of attacks was better than a few. Training with these new attacks were interesting, to say the least. It would usually start with Whis firing some attacks at him or charging him head-on, but as Naruto began to master each attack, they got more and more powerful with each passing day. And, let's just say that every time Naruto fired one of his moves, the landscape would always be scarred. Flashback, Whis and Beerus's planet. The sounds of explosions filled the air as Naruto flew up into the air, dodging all the projectiles that Whis fired at him. As he flew through the air, he drew his arms to his side and focused his energy in between his hands and soon, a swirl of blue energy began forming. Ka-mi-ha-mi, he started chanting. The energy in his hands grew even larger and generated a swirling, light blue aura around his arms. He then shot both his arms forward and yelled, "Ha!" Suddenly, a massive, blue energy wave erupted from his hands and began surging towards the god. Luckily, Whis dodged it in time but the ground he was standing on ended up getting obliterated as the Kamehameha blasted through it like it was nothing. As Whis landed back on the ground, he looked at Naruto with a deadpan expression. "Must you always have to decimate the landscape every time we train like this?" he asked. "Yes," responded Naruto, nonchalantly. The god of creation sighed. Whis tapped his staff on the ground, causing the landscape around them to slowly repair itself and soon enough, everything was back to the way it was before the training session. Of course he just had to develop the same thirst for battle just like Goku and Vegeta. Why am I not surprised? Thought Whis. End flashback. Yep, that's pretty much how every training session was. Whis will either launch projectiles or charge him head-on and then it ends with Naruto blowing up the surrounding area. Typical DBZ fashion, am I right? In terms of physical and mental growth, the past few years have been very good to Naruto. No longer was he wearing his old, bright orange and blue jumpsuit. Now he wore a clothing set that was a combination of Goku's GI and Broly's outfit during their time. The outfit consisted of a dark blue muscle shirt, baggy white pants combined with dark blue, indigo combat boots and a large, orange and blue sash, coupled with a necklace similar to the one Broly wore except his had a single red gem in the middle. 1. His height had grown from about 4 feet 9 inches to around 5 feet 11 inches and he bulked up significantly as well. His build is similar to Ultimate Gohan. His hair also grew out and spiked upwards, somehow defying gravity while leaving a few bangs hanging down on his forehead. It even began to change color as well. At some point during the last 7 years, his blonde hair started to get darker and darker before it eventually became jet black in color. His eyes changed from a bright, cerulean blue to a darker, more cobalt blue. These days, his eyes no longer had that same lively and energetic look to them as they did when he was a kid. Now, they were that of a warrior who's prepared for battle. His overall knowledge and fighting prowess also shot up. Back then, the old him would always aim to charge his opponents head-on without as much as a strategy. These days, he has a knack for observing his enemies, figuring out their strategy as well as their offensive and defensive capabilities. Overall, he's not the same kid anymore. That old Naruto no longer exists. In his place was now a fierce Saiyan warrior ready for the toughest of battles to come. Now we find Naruto training in one of the empty fields once more, fighting a dummy that Whis created himself to test out any moves he plans on practicing and improving on. Naruto was standing not too far away from the target dummy as he wondered what move to use next on said dummy. Okay, let's see. I've already got the Super Kamehameha down, as well as Broly's attacks, so now it's time to try that one. I've been meaning to try it out, he thought. Naruto floated about 60 feet off the ground and drew both of his arms to his sides. In each hand, a large amount of ki began to generate. Soon, a bright yellow aura surrounded him as the ki began pulsating in his hands. He had been meaning to try out this new attack for quite some time now, ever since Yami gave him the Saiyan's memories a while back. The entire training grounds were now shaking under the pressure of Naruto's next move. He then aimed his arms forward and right as the attack was to be unleashed, he yelled, "Phi Null Flash." Right as he yelled out, a massive beam of golden yellow energy erupted from his hands and surged its way towards the target dummy before engulfing it, and the surrounding area, in a spectacular display of pure, unadulterated power. From a distance, all you could see was a very bright flash of yellow that lasted for about 10 long seconds before finally dying down. When the light finally died down, the entire training grounds was pretty much a wasteland at this point. Where the dummy once stood was now a massive scar in the ground that ran for who knows how long. Not bad, he commented. Knowing that Whis was going to get pissed again, Naruto decided to call it a day and used instant transmission to return to his room. Sometime later, Naruto's quarters. Naruto was staring out of the window in his room as he let out another sigh. Even years after arriving here on the God's planet, he still had some second thoughts as to why he agreed in the first place. Sure, he was going to stop 2 evil schemes from destroying his world, but the real issue here is the group caught in the crossfire that's causing him to question his decision. Yes, he is talking about the Hidden Leaf, the reason he had basically no childhood whatsoever. Instead of playing around with the other kids or having a family to call his own, he grew up scorned and victimized by everyone. Well, almost everyone. There were still a select few who never thought of him as a demon, and it was the thought of losing them that had initially caused Naruto to agree to Yami's deal. But now that he thought about it, his overall impression of the leaf still hasn't changed since his death. He still hated the place along with most of its residents. He was still pretty sure that people still considered him the Kyuubi incarnate to this day, even though Kyuubi is no longer sealed inside of him, and he was still positive that both of his old teammates still haven't changed. Looking back, he realized just how doomed from the start Team 7 was. Sakura was the weakest link in their team. Let's be honest. Sakura wasn't really that strong until after her training with Tsunade. She practically had no training in any shinobi arts except for those taught in the academy. Her chakra levels were abysmal at best and Naruto was pretty sure that she didn't have any real survival skills in battle. Well, as far as he knew. They used to be friends, but her evolving attitude ultimately destroyed the friendship they once had. Back in their pre-academy years, Sakura was one of his best friends at the time, but as they got older and began their quest to become Shinobi of the Leaf, their friendship started to slowly fall apart. It got so bad that it seemed like she couldn't even stand the sight of him anymore. When they got put into a team together, Naruto was hoping to become friends with her like he used to be, but instead it only got worse. She would often berate him for being useless during missions, and whenever he would try anything, let alone talk to her, it would usually end with him down on the floor as she storms off. However, Sakura wasn't the only person that on Naruto's head right now. The other was someone that he was very familiar with, and she was the whole reason that he ended up dead in the first place. Sayuri Uchiha. After everything they've gone through together, from the day they met, to all the times they spent together talking, laughing, spending time in each other's company, to their placement on Team 7, she threw it all away like it was nothing. It's unfortunate, really, just how similarly the circumstances were of both Sakura and Sayuri leaving him behind. Only, Sayuri was much more vicious about it. She was the first to ever acknowledge Naruto as himself rather than the Kyuubi. She was his first real friend. Growing up, Naruto had to deal with the discrimination of practically everybody in the village, and it really was hell for him. When he met Sayuri, she was one of the nicest people he had ever met. She would always spend time with him telling jokes, talking about the latest news and so on and so forth. During those days, he even developed a bit of a crush on her, since she would always spend time with him. Sayuri also seemed to like him back as well, even though she did a good job of hiding it. But then the massacre happened and pretty much all traces of the old Sayuri disappeared. After that, she became the cold, arrogant, revenge-driven Uchiha that Naruto knew very, very well. It really hurt him to see his first and closest friend, and crush, treat him like he never existed. Everything about her changed, her personality, her attitude towards everyone, everything. When he had first received news from the third Hokage that he and Sayuri would be placed on the same team together, he was hopeful that he could bring the old Sayuri back. But of course, it didn't work. Nothing worked at all. The old Sayuri was just gone. No longer was she the sweet and caring girl that Naruto fell for all those years ago. Yes, he fell for Sayuri instead of Sakura in this story. Now she was just a shadow of her former self. Not wanting to believe that she was truly gone, Naruto tried one final time to bring her back, but by the end of their little talk, all hopes of bringing back the old Sayuri were crushed for good. The memories of that day replayed in his mind. The day Sayuri finally left him in the dust. Flashback, 5 years ago, Hidden Leaf, Uchiha District. Naruto walked past the main entrance of the Uchiha District in search of Sayuri. He was going to try one final time to get the old Sayuri back, since he still believed that there was a chance that it could happen. He walked down the street, observing all the empty houses as he moved forward. It was odd seeing the normally populated district so empty and void of life. It must have been hard for Sayuri to live like this all the time, without any of her clan members around. After a little bit of wandering, he spotted Sayuri heading towards her home. Knowing that this was his last shot, Naruto proceeded towards her. "Hey, Sayuri, wait," he yelled out. Sayuri turned her around to see Naruto approaching her. Great, what does he want now, she thought. What do you want now, Naruto? She asked rather coldly. Just wanted to have a little chat, like old times, replied Naruto. Haven't I already told you? I don't have time for any of this, she said. Come on, you always say that these days. Can't we just talk for once? Asked Naruto. What do you want then? She asked. Well, I was wondering if you wanted to hang out together, like old times, replied Naruto. Sayuri didn't even respond back before she turned around and started walking away. Wait, hold on, Naruto yelled. Sayuri ignored him as she continued walking back to her home. She had more important things to deal with than Naruto. Can't we just hang out like we used to when we were kids? Why do you keep pushing me away? Naruto said, sadly. That stopped her in her tracks. Contrary to popular belief, Sayuri still cared about Naruto, but to her, avenging the Uchiha clan was worth more than the friendship she and Naruto shared as kids. She figured that if the bond between her and Naruto was no more, then nothing could stop her from finally achieving the power that she needed in order to defeat Itachi. Don't forget that he's the reason that she is obsessed with gaining power. She had hoped that he would understand, but it's obvious that he won't. Not wanting to deal with it anymore, she decided to end it once and for all. Why am I pushing you away? Simple. Because you're holding me back, said Sayuri. Holding you back? From what? Naruto asked. From gaining the power I need in order to avenge the Uchiha clan. Our bond is holding me back from achieving that goal, and whether you like it or not, I will gain that power, even if it means no longer being friends with you, said Sayuri coldly. Naruto's eyes widened. She was throwing their bond away for more power? Face it, Naruto. What we had as kids, I don't need it anymore. But, Sayuri, I thought he began. But nothing. It's over, Naruto. Our bond means nothing to me anymore. Why can't you understand that? Naruto just stood there, not saying a word. He felt like his heart was torn in two. His most precious person, the same girl who gave him a sense of happiness, has severed their bond once and for all. Sayuri, not wanting to spend any more time here, turned around and started walking again, but not before saying one last statement to Naruto. Don't bother trying this again anytime soon. You can deny it all you want, but it doesn't change anything. What we had as kids, it's over. And with that, she proceeded on her way back to her home. Naruto just stood there for a while, trying to grasp the situation before turning back and heading home himself. Not wanting to gain any unwanted attention, he took to the rooftops on his way back. If anyone were to have seen him that night, they would have immediately wondered why he had tears running down his eyes. They would be oblivious to the fact that he had lost his most precious person, and there wasn't anything he could do about it anymore. End flashback. She was the first to acknowledge him as a person. She gave him a sense of happiness during his harder-than-most childhood. He loved her, but she repaid him by tearing his heart in two and leaving him in the dust. Naruto clenched his fists. Even after all these years, the memories of that day were still etched onto his mind as if they had happened just yesterday. Over the years, he thought that he could finally put his past behind him, but it proved to be futile. A single question has been popping up in his head every now and then, which got him thinking. Do I truly hate her? Or am I just telling myself that? Whatever the case was, Naruto would soon have to answer that question once he returns, and he wasn't looking forward to it. Back in the elemental nations. Sayuri. Sayuri looked down at the fallen form of her former teammate. She then began charging up another Chidori in her hand, at last. Now, I can complete the next step in getting my revenge. She kneeled down over him and lifted up her lighting-filled hand. Naruto's eyes widened. Wait. Stab. Ah. Sayuri shot up from her bed as the memories of that day replayed in her mind. Her hands were shaking uncontrollably and her breathing was erratic. Naruto. Her first and only true friend. The same boy who gave her a sense of happiness after her clan fell. The same boy she betrayed and murdered. When she realized that her Sharingan didn't evolve, it had shocked the hell out of her. She did what she was supposed to do. Murder someone close to you in order to awaken the Mangekyo Sharingan. It was supposed to work, right? Wrong. It didn't work in her favor, which meant one thing. Naruto had died in vain, and it was all her fault. When she finally realized just how badly she fucked up that day, she broke down in complete despair. Her obsession to gain power resulted in her killing the one person who cared about her the most in the entire village. Not a day has passed by that memories of her childhood wouldn't haunt her dreams, reminding her of what used to be her life. Perhaps if things had gone differently, then maybe her life wouldn't have gone downhill. Maybe she would have never left Konoha, then she would have had a better life. Maybe Naruto would still be alive. Sayuri couldn't stop the tears from streaming down her face and her sobs started to become louder. How could she do this to him? Was getting revenge so important to her that she would go so far as to stab her one true friend in the back? Back then, yes. But now, she saw just how wrong she was. She had been a fool for what she did to Naruto. Severing their bond may have been the single worst decision she had ever made because it basically meant that there was no turning back. Nowadays, she is a wanted A-rank missing nin with practically nowhere to go. Tsunade sure as hell won't let her back and Gaara would probably do the same. So, now what should she do? Just stay on the run for the rest of her life? She doesn't know. Regardless of what she or the rest of her group planned to do, it all boils down to, it's your fault for screwing up. Perhaps this was her price to pay for throwing her life away all those years ago. Maybe this was Kami's way of punishing her for her foolishness. Naruto, I'm so sorry. She repeated that statement in her head over and over again, despite the years that have passed since his death, but that didn't stop her from regretting it any less. Oh, how she wished that she could see him again, to make up for her stupidity from that day. But she knows that she'll never see him again, right? Hidden Leaf Village, 7 years after VOTE mission. If someone were to discriminate you your entire life for something not in your control and not realize how wrong they were about you until it's too late, are they worthy of forgiveness? Would you be willing to give them a second chance? Does blind hatred justify someone getting mobbed on, beaten down, overpriced in stores or any other form of victimization? Not in the Leaf Village, it doesn't, not anymore at least. Ever since the Kyuubi's attack almost 22 years ago, the citizens of Konoha couldn't let go of their hatred for the tailed beast. Because of that, it ended up leading to the not-so-illustrious childhood of one Naruto Uzumaki, the demon brat, as most of them used to call him. Very few ever treated him as a normal person. Those few included the late Sandaime Hokage, Hiruzen Sarutobi and his son Asuma, Kakashi, the Ichiraku family, Tsunade, Shizune, Jiraiya and some of the remaining Rookie 12. Through these individuals, Naruto was able to have a somewhat bearable life in the Leaf. Unfortunately, it didn't stop him from eventually getting himself killed trying to bring back another former member of the Leaf. It took many years, but the citizens of the Leaf have finally let go of their hatred for Naruto. And what did it take for them to finally do it? They found who he was related to. He was the son of their proclaimed hero, Minato Namikaze, the Yondaime Hokage, and his wife, Kushina Uzumaki. The moment this was revealed, public opinion of Naruto changed dramatically. No longer was he considered a monster or demon brat, as he was once called. Nowadays, any mention of Naruto was considered taboo, especially around people like Tsunade. Overall, the Leaf Village was affected by Naruto's death in more ways than one. Not only were its citizens affected, but many people around the elemental nations who have interacted with Team 7 in the past were affected well. Tazuna and his family over at Wave Country were shocked to hear that Naruto had perished and to hear that the Leaf had rejoiced in his death. Initially, that almost resulted in their alliance breaking apart. The same could be said with Spring Country's daimyo, Koyuki Kazuhana. When she heard about Naruto's passing, she almost lost her shit and broke off their alliance with the Leaf. Luckily, Tsunade had sent her a message saying that public opinion of Naruto had changed in the Leaf for the better and was hoping that their alliance was still in affect. Koyuki was reluctant at first about the message, but eventually, she messaged back saying that their alliance was still holding together, for now at least. Perhaps, the person most affected outside of the Leaf Village, and Sayuri, was Gaara. Out of all the people that knew Naruto, Gaara was able to relate to him the most. He knew what it was like to be ostracized by your own home village. He too had grown up alone and without any friends. But what sets him apart from Naruto is that he was able to change the opinion of his home village on his own. It took Naruto dying for things to finally change, unfortunately, and that's why he hated Konoha for a while. Luckily for Konoha, most of his hatred was directed at one Sayuri Uchiha. A Jinchuriki's life is almost always one of loneliness and discrimination, and the fact that she befriended him at a young age only to stab him in the back in the end was something that was unforgivable in his mind. He could not believe that she had stooped so low just to quench her thirst for power. He made it a promise to Naruto that if he ever saw her again, he would not hesitate to kill her. In a few days, Gaara was going to visit the Leaf Village as per Tsunade's request. When he gets there, he and Tsunade will be discussing what to do about a certain Snake Sanin on the move again. Konoha's council room. Tsunade stood in front of both the shinobi and civilian sides of the council, as well as the remaining members of the former Rookie 12 and Jiraiya. Thank you all for coming. Now, as you all know, Orochimaru had attempted to invade us a few years back, but fortunately, he failed. But now, it seems that he has mustered up enough forces to try again, and now, he's declared war on us once more. Everyone in the room began talking amongst themselves. The rookies, however, all had one thought going through their minds. Sayuri, however, Tsunade began, we have another problem. This silenced the entire crowd. Like what, Lady Tsunade? Asked one of the councilmen. The Akatsuki have begun mobilizing as well, began Jiraiya. Both sides of the council became wide-eyed. Jiraiya had informed them of the Akatsuki a few years back, during their first attempts at collecting all the tailed beasts. Ever since then, the sightings of Akatsuki members have been steadily increasing, putting every other shinobi nation on high alert, considering that their own Jinchuriki were now in danger of capture. If they truly are mobilizing for an all-out assault, then the Leaf would be in danger. This is bad. Orochimaru has already declared war on us once more. If the Akatsuki are mobilizing as well, said Shikaku. We don't know for sure who the Akatsuki are targeting or even if they're targeting someone. My spies haven't been able to infiltrate their headquarters in AIM, explained Jiraiya. Regardless of what their motives are, we must be on high alert. With two major factions against us, there's no telling if we can beat them on our own, especially since we don't know the standing of the other nations in this matter, stated Inoichi. He's right, we don't know for sure if other nations like Iwa and Kumo will be involved. We have to think this through carefully, said Shikaku. I've already contacted the case cage about this issue. He should be here in the next few days. From there, we'll discuss this further. For now, this meeting is adjourned. All former Rookie 12 members, come to my office in 30 minutes. I have a mission for you, finished Tsunade. All the former rookies nodded and proceeded out of the room along with the council members. Jiraiya was the only one who stayed behind. What else do you need, Jiraiya? Asked Tsunade. Well, the Akatsuki are finally starting to make their move. But, Kyuubi hasn't re-emerged yet, said Jiraiya. What are you getting at? Asked Tsunade. What I'm saying is that, since that day, don't you dare, Tsunade threatened. I know, just hear me out, okay? Pleaded Jiraiya. Jiraiya was well aware that mentioning Naruto in any way to Tsunade is basically a death sentence, but he had a point to bring up and Tsunade needed to hear this. Fine, what is it? Asked Tsunade, crossing her arms. Alright, so I've already told you that the Akatsuki have begun mobilizing, right? Asked Jiraiya. Tsunade nodded. Alright, now, I want you to think about this. The Akatsuki are after the tailed beasts and from what we've seen, they've already made attempts at capturing some of the other Jinchurikis. Regardless of whatever they're planning, they need all 9 tailed beasts in order to set their plan into motion. Only 8 of them are present in the nations with Kyuubi gone. Despite that, the Leaf still seems to be a big target for them, explained Jiraiya. What are you getting at, Jiraiya? Asked Tsunade, curiously. What I'm saying is that there's something odd going on. Akatsuki members have been spotted the most frequently in the Land of Fire and in some instances, just outside of Konoha. This shouldn't be the case since they're more than likely aware that Kyuubi has been gone for years now, said Jiraiya. So that begs the question, began Jiraiya. What exactly are they planning? Silence filled the room. Well, whatever they're planning, it can't be good, said Tsunade. Jiraiya couldn't agree more. Memorial Stone, 10 minutes after council meeting. The Memorial Stone was considered a form of honorary tribute to the many Konoha shinobi who have fallen in conflict in the many years since the village's founding. Countless names of Konoha's most notable shinobi can be found here. Hashirama and Tobarama Senju, Tsukumo Hitaki, Nawaki Senju, Hiruzen Sarutobi, Minato Namikaze, Kushina Uzumaki. But to a select few, there was one name that stood out among all the shinobi listed here. The reason? His death had inadvertently caused so much change in the people of Konoha, especially its leader and those close to her. His name? Naruto Uzumaki Namikaze. Son of their much-beloved 4th Hokage, Minato Namikaze. Scorned Jinchuriki of the Nine-Tailed Fox. His treatment during his childhood will remain one of Konoha's darkest moments in its history. No matter how much time has passed since his death, the memories of his treatment still linger on within the minds of those who victimized him and the few who befriended him during his younger years. In front of the memorial stone was one of the few people who ever cared about Naruto enough to defend him from the shinobi, hide him from mobs and so on and so forth. Kakashi Hitaki looked at all the names of people he had lost over the years since he became a shinobi, but few had deeply affected him like Naruto had. To Kakashi, abandoning your teammates in any way, shape or form was something he swore he would never do, something his sensei, the 4th Hokage, had taught him in his youth. It was a severe blow to him, knowing that he had gone against his own creed when it came to Naruto. It was even worse when he found out that Naruto was the son of his sensei. As Kakashi looked on, he didn't notice the person who walked up behind him. Hey, Kakashi-sensei. Kakashi looked behind him and saw his last remaining student, Sakura Haruno. She, just like the rest of the Rookie 12, has changed greatly over the years. Appearance-wise, she had changed only a little bit. She still had her same old red outfit except it had longer sleeves and black biker shorts, Shippuden outfit with a few changes. Her hair had grown out again and was now at shoulder length. Other than that, her appearance hadn't changed that significantly. Her personality, however, had changed drastically. Thanks to training under Tsunade alongside Ino and Hinata, not to mention her little talk with Kakashi a few years back, her attitude had finally changed for the better. She was no longer that same as she was years ago when Team 7 first formed. Nowadays, she was much friendlier with everyone and didn't have the same tendencies to hit others anymore. It really helped her in finally rekindling her friendship with the other rookies. "Hello, Sakura. What brings you here?" asked Kakashi. "Oh, I just wanted to." "Still bothering you?" interrupted Kakashi. "Yeah," responded Sakura. "Want to talk about it?" asked Kakashi. "Yeah," said Sakura. "Hard to believe it's been years since that day, huh?" asked Kakashi. Sakura looked down. She was disgusted with herself after realizing just how much she had treated Naruto so poorly, especially knowing that she was one of his closest friends at one point in their younger years. Remembering all the times she had spent with Naruto only to throw it away nearly brought her to tears, very similar to a certain other kunoichi. "I was wrong," she said quietly. "What?" asked Kakashi. "I was wrong," Sakura said louder. "About what?" asked Kakashi again. "Naruto. I was wrong to treat him like that. He was one of my first friends and I treated him like he was worthless," said Sakura, tears building up in her eyes. Kakashi was sad, yet relieved at the same time. He was sad that now he only had one remaining student left but also happy that she finally realized her mistakes. "I don't know what came over me. It was like I just inadvertently followed the other villagers in scorning him. Maybe if I had known the real him back then, maybe Aichi would—" Sakura started sobbing as she continued to speak. Kakashi came over and put his arm on her shoulder. "I shouldn't have pushed him away all those years ago. I should have kept our bond intact," cried Sakura. Kakashi looked at her with a somber expression. "We were all so wrong," she said, tears freely flowing. A few minutes later, Sakura said her goodbyes before going home. Kakashi soon found himself alone once again. Deciding to call it a day, he started walking back home. Just as he started walking, he glanced at the stone one last time before making his way back home. "You really did have a major impact on us, for the better." Beerus and Whis Planet. Speaking of Naruto, he was sitting in his room meditating when he suddenly opened his eyes. "Why do I have a feeling that someone's talking about me?" he thought to himself. He got up and walked towards to the window, staring out into the vast, open landscape of Beerus and Whis Planet. Not much longer before I get back. I wonder, has changed since I died?" he said in his head. After training for the last 7 years under the guidance of Whis, much of Naruto's overall impression of his old home, Konoha, had changed. He originally wanted nothing to do with it anymore, and considering his not-so-illustrious childhood, it's pretty obvious why. However, as time went on, his anger towards Konoha slowly became that of indifference. Does that mean he forgives them for his treatment as a kid? Hell no, there is no changing that. No amount of regret on their part would ever convince him to forgive them. It's just not possible at this point in time. Memories of his past life still linger on in his mind, a reminder of what used to be. Even to this day, he still can't seem to escape from his home, in a way. I wonder what Whis is doing. Maybe I should go and find him. Nah. I'm sure he's busy doing something else. Might as well continue training. Naruto stared out the window for a few more seconds before he warped back to the training grounds with instant transmission. About 1 hour later, with Beerus and Whis. Within one of the many buildings built into the massive, hollowed tree in the center of the pyramid-shaped planet, Beerus and Whis were sat down, enjoying a large buffet filled with food of all kinds. The room they were in was basically a dining room. Large table with enough seats to cater to quite a few people, plenty of food, it had it all. The outside was filled with aquatic creatures of all kinds swimming about, occasionally getting close to the large glass panes that separated them from the dining room. Beerus had just recently awoken from his long slumber. After so many years of laying dormant, the god of destruction was now up and about, ready to continue his job as per usual. He had heard from Whis that the super warrior they were looking for has finally been located. He was eager to meet this warrior in question and was ready to go out and find him, but he was surprised that Whis had already found him and that he was currently training out in the open fields at the moment. "I'm curious, Whis, how long ago did you find him?" asked Beerus, eating the various foods surrounding him. "About 7 years ago," replied Whis as he poured 2 different drinks into a glass. "That many years, huh? I'll have to meet him face to face sometime. Maybe he can give me a decent challenge," said the god of destruction. Whis sensed Naruto's key signature vanish in a split second and an idea popped up in his head. "Maybe you can meet him a lot sooner," said Whis. Beerus looked at him with a curious expression. "What are you talking about?" asked Beerus. "I'll just bring him here, then the two of you can finally talk face to face," replied Whis. Beerus thought about for a minute before nodding. "Very well. Bring him here then," he said and went back to enjoying his meal. Whis nodded back and warped away. A few minutes later, Whis materialized with Naruto at his side back in the dining room. Naruto looked at all the food sitting on the table before he spotted Beerus. Beerus was busy chomping away at his food when he looked up and locked eyes with Naruto. The two stared at each other for a few seconds before Beerus broke the silence. So you're the warrior we've been waiting for all these years. I was beginning to wonder when you would finally surface," said Beerus. Naruto nodded. "I'm sure Whis has already told you who I am," said Beerus. Naruto nodded again. "Beerus the Destroyer, our universe's god of destruction," said Naruto. A small smile appeared on Beerus's face. "That's right, and don't you forget that," he said. A moment of silence followed before Beerus spoke again. "Well, you are a guest here, so come on, sit down." "Have a bite," said Beerus. Naruto looked back at Whis. "Go ahead, I'll get you a drink," said Whis before walking off. Naruto nodded and proceeded to the table and began gathering some food before sitting down and started eating. This food's not bad, actually. I guess it's nice to eat something other than ramen for a change," he thought. "So, tell me, how much stronger have you gotten since Whis found you?" asked Beerus. "Immensely," replied Naruto. "You don't say? Perhaps I should see for myself. What do you think? Care to show me your strength sometime?" asked Beerus. Naruto looked up at Beerus. "Maybe. If there's ever an opportunity in the future, then sure," replied Naruto before looking down again. "Fair enough," said Beerus before he resumed eating. The two sat at the table in silence for a few minutes before Whis came back with some drinks. "I take it you two are getting along?" he asked, setting the drinks down. "We're doing all right," said Naruto, chowing down on his food. Whis smiled at him. "Oh, wonderful," he replied. The three sat down at the table, enjoying their feast. The time for his return was fast approaching. Soon, Naruto will fulfill his duties to Whis and Beerus. And maybe, just maybe, he can settle some things from his old life once and for all. 2 days later, a megacure has been the site of many conflicts throughout Shinobi history. In most cases, it was a war between two opposing sides with the Rain Village caught in the crossfire. So many years of conflict has left the nation of Megacure as a whole weakened because of all the casualties sustained over the years. Still, it remained one of the most locked down places in all of the elemental nations. Even the nation's most renowned spies and infiltrators can't hope to find a way in, not even Jiraiya's spy network. Despite all that has happened over the years and its current standing, the Hidden Rain is still called home to many people, including a certain organization. The Akatsuki, the notorious group of S-ranked missing nin, calls the Rain Village home, and it has been in the years since its founding. What started off as a small peace movement eventually evolved into the infamous terrorist group it's known as today. Outside of a few of its members, little to none is known about the original Akatsuki other than it supposedly began sometime during the Third Shinobi World War. During their early years, they were rather popular among certain village figures, who hired them for assassinations they themselves were unwilling to do during times of peace. More like a ceasefire. Unfortunately, their popularity would soon devolve into that of notoriety, when their overall goals soon became hunting down and harnessing the power of the tailed beasts. From there, they became known as an infamous group of terrorists, and considered an enemy faction in all shinobi nations. Over the last 5 years, Akatsuki activity has significantly increased, to the point where all shinobi nations, even the minor ones, were on high alert. They've been spotted in almost every nation. Eyewitnesses from all over all have the same reports coming in. Figures roaming around in black cloaks with red clouds on them, seemingly searching for something, presumably, the whereabouts of the tailed beast Jinchurikis. Oddly enough, most of these sightings seem to happen the most frequently in and around the Land of Fire. The majority of Konoha's shinobi force all agreed on the assumption that the Akatsuki are most likely looking for the Kyuubi's Jinchuriki. Unfortunately for them, that's not the reason why Akatsuki are there in the first place, no. In fact, the Akatsuki are well aware that the Kyuubi's Jinchuriki died years ago, taking the Kyuubi with him. It wasn't that hard to figure out, especially since one of their members, Zetsu, was spying on the battle that occurred 5 years back. So far, the Kyuubi hasn't reformed yet, so their plans have been set back for now. So now, the question is, if they know for sure that Kyuubi is still gone, then why exactly are they still snooping around Konoha? The only person who can answer that question is the leader of the Akatsuki, the big man himself, Pain. Or should I say, Nagato Uzumaki. Orphan of war, seeker of peace, current wielder of the legendary Rinnegan. One of the last living Uzumaki left in the world. Most of his clan fell sometime during the Second Shinobi War, in a joint attack from 3 of the 5 major shinobi nations. He was one of the only Uzumaki to escape the island of Whirlpool before it fell to enemy forces. For most of his later life, he thought that his family died along with the rest of his clan when Uzushio was attacked, but he eventually found out that wasn't the case. He did have surviving family, his sister. After sending out Zetsu to the village of Konoha, Nagato found out that his sister lived within the village and even had a family of her own after Uzushio fell. He was ecstatic to hear that he still had family left, but that all fell apart when Zetsu informed him of her death nearly 19 years ago during Kyuubi's rampage. After that, he was absolutely livid, not only at Konoha for allowing his sister to die, but also at himself for not finding out any sooner. Naturally, he began to wonder who was responsible for it and would have gone all the way to Konoha for his answer, but Zetsu revealed the culprit. Much to his shock, it was Tobi who was behind the Kyuubi's rampage, which in turn, means he's responsible for her death. Zetsu even went on about all the other atrocities that Tobi has committed over the years, from starting Kiri's bloodline civil war by manipulating Yagura to being one of the killers during the Uchiha massacre and so on. Now, Nagato was absolutely livid. Tobi manipulated him, and the other Akatsuki members, into hunting the tailed beasts for a plan that, even Zetsu agrees with, will not bring about true peace. Not only that, he was also the reason his sister and her family died. Tobi has caused too much bloodshed, and that is unforgivable in Nagato's eyes. Now he knew what he had to do: eliminate Tobi once and for all. Hidden Rain Village. At the top of one of AIM's highest towers stood 3 figures, 2 men and a woman, looking down at the village below as rain continued to pour down from the darkened skies above. "Are you sure that he's still unaware?" the man asked. "Yes. Tobi still has no idea what you actually plan on doing," the other man said. "Good. Just make sure he remains in the dark about this, Zetsu. No doubt he will try to interfere with our actual plan," he said. "Understood," Zetsu replied before he disappeared into the ground. "It's almost time to begin. Are you ready, Nagato?" asked the woman. "Yes, Conan. Once Tobi is disposed of, nothing will stop us from our goal of true peace. Return to our quarters. I'll join you in a little bit," said Nagato. Conan nodded before disappearing in a swirl of origami paper. Nagato looked back at the village before looking up into the darkened skies, his metallic purple eyes glowing in the darkness. The time of reckoning is approaching. The elemental nations will finally have true peace, and nobody will stop us, not even you, Madara. Those were his last thoughts before he descended back down to the village streets and made his way to his quarters. Nagato's quarters. Conan returned to Nagato's room just after Zetsu's short briefing on at the top of the tower. She made her way through the main door and found her longtime friend lying down on the bed, the real Nagato. Nagato's body isn't as badly damaged like it is in canon. He's not able to move like he used to, but he is able to walk for a short period of time before his legs give out. Also, he's not hooked up to that machine, support thing, whatever the hell you call it, either. Conan walked over to the side of the bed. "How are you feeling, Nagato?" she asked. Nagato slowly turned his head towards her. "I've had better days," responded Nagato. We both have, said Conan as she lay down beside him. How long until we strike? Asked Conan. Just a few more days. He's out doing whatever it is he does. When he gets back, then we'll strike. For now, let's call it a night, said Nagato. And Konoha? Nagato looked at her directly in the eyes. War is brewing between Konoha and Oto, and if the other nations get involved, then it will be the next great Shinobi World War. When the time comes that Konoha is weakened by enemy forces, we will slip in and strike when they least expect it, finished Nagato with conviction in his voice. Conan smiled before resting her head on his chest before the both of them went off into their dream worlds for the night. Leaf Village, Tsunade's office. Gaara arrived at the village gates about 30 minutes ago as per Tsunade's request. With the impending war on the horizon, the Leaf and the Sand will have to act fast if they expect to win this time. He and his two siblings, Kankuro and Tamari, were seated in front of Tsunade and Jiraiya. Welcome back to Konoha, Lord Casecage. I trust you had a smooth time traveling? Asked Tsunade. Indeed it was, Lady Tsunade, responded Gaara. Good. Now, I assume you know why I called you here today? Yes. Oto seems ready to go to war once more, only this time, we don't know if they have any foreign ally or not, said Gaara. Hopefully, they don't have any other allies. If Iwa or Kumo get involved, who knows what'll happen, said Jiraiya. What if they are involved? Asked Kankuro out of the blue. Everyone was silent for a few seconds. None of them really had an answer for that question. If they're involved, began Gaara, the Leaf and Sand could be in grave danger. Jiraiya quietly cursed to himself. He knows that Konoha was not prepared for another full-scale war. They just don't have the same manpower or the numbers advantage like they used to in the previous conflicts with the other nations. To make matters worse, there's still the Akatsuki they had to deal with. He is still yet to figure out what Akatsuki is up to in regards to all the sightings of them in the Land of Fire in the last few years. If the Akatsuki are preparing to attack as well, Konoha just might be doomed this time. Oh, they have no idea. Any news on the Akatsuki? Asked Gaara. Speak of the devil. Jiraiya thought. Jiraiya. Anything? Asked Tsunade. Jiraiya shook his head. Nothing. My spies haven't found anything significant about them. Information collected from all the sightings are minimal at best and we can't seem to bypass the Rain Village's walls. That's the odd thing. Kyuubi still hasn't reappeared and yet they're still snooping around in the Land of Fire, explained Jiraiya. Gaara raised an eyebrow. Kyuubi hasn't reformed yet? He asked. No. All traces of it disappeared that day, Tsunade said, sadly. Everyone knew exactly what she was referring to. Unbeknownst to everyone, Gaara narrowed his eyes slightly and slowly clenched his hands tightly. He was still adamant on the promise he made to Naruto about Sayuri and he will make sure that it will be fulfilled, should the situation pop up. So much could have been avoided if the village had just respected the Fourth's wishes, said Tsunade, harshly. As much as she hated this place and its people, Konoha was still her home. Granted, she doesn't hate everyone in the village. There are still a few people left that she holds no grudge against, mostly the people who were nice to Naruto when he was a kid, but even then, it's not enough to quell her distaste with the village. There were so many times since that day, that she wanted nothing more than to pack her bags and leave, again. In her eyes, Konoha had taken enough of her loved ones from her. First her brother, Nawaki, then her lover, Dan and finally, her surrogate son, Naruto. Sometimes, it felt like it was just too much for her. Unfortunately, there's nothing we can do to change the past, said Gaara. If only there was a way, said Jiraiya. Another moment of silence passed before anyone said anything again. Well, for now, all we can do is focus on the present and figure out what we're going to do with Orochimaru, said Gaara. Agreed. Any ideas so far? Asked Gaara. From what we know so far, Sound hasn't really launched any attacks as far as we know. We could send out some reconnaissance teams to scout out the Sound village in Rice Country, said Tsunade. That sounds kind of risky. Who knows what Orochimaru has been doing in the last few years, said Jiraiya. Before they could continue, Shizune came barging through the door, holding a scroll of sorts. Lady Tsunade, you have to see this. She yelled. What is it, Shizune? Asked Tsunade. Shizune walked up to her desk and handed her the scroll. We found this just outside of the village walls just a few minutes ago. On the side, it says it's for you, Lady Tsunade, explained Shizune. Thank you, Shizune, said Tsunade. Shizune nodded and said her goodbyes to everyone before walking out of the room and heading back to the hospital. Jiraiya looked at the scroll suspiciously, almost like there was something wrong with it. As Tsunade opened it, he saw a message inscribed in it. "What's in the scroll?" asked Temari. Tsunade had a lost look on her face. "It says, Konoha is the first step to true peace." "What does that mean?" asked Tsunade. Jiraiya was also wondering what it meant until he saw something at the bottom of the message. He examined it a little closer before his eyes widened. "Jiraiya, what's wrong?" asked Tsunade. Jiraiya pointed to the bottom of the message, and that's when Tsunade saw it. The symbol of the rain village with a slash going through it. The Akatsuki, he thought. "I don't understand. What's going on?" asked Gaara. Jiraiya looked at him with a grim look on his face. "I think we just figured out who sent this message," he said. "Who?" asked Temari. "The Akatsuki," responded Tsunade. The Sand siblings' eyes widened. Does this mean the Akatsuki are preparing to attack? If that's the case, then the situation may have just taken a turn for the worst. Meanwhile, Beerus and Whis planet. Back on the gods' planet, we find our favorite Uzumaki warrior punching and kicking away at yet another training dummy. There were only a few more days before he returns, and he wasn't going to waste any time sitting round waiting for it. He launched a barrage of lightning fast punches and a few high-powered kicks. It was surprising that the dummy was still intact after all that Naruto was throwing at it. After a few more minutes of non-stop punches and kicks, he decided to end today's training session with a bang. Deidara would be proud. He flew up into the air and charged a large amount of ki in his right hand. The orb began to glow a bright emerald green color as it grew larger. He set his sights on the training dummy and pulled his arm back. Eraser cannon. He launched the ki orb right at the training dummy. As it sailed through the air, it seemed to get bigger and bigger. Right as it hit the dummy, a massive bright emerald green explosion engulfed the entire training ground. It tore apart the landscape, and after the smoke had cleared, all that was left was a large crater where the training grounds used to be. Naruto floated back down to the ground and inspected the damage. Whis can fix it, he thought. Suddenly, a figure began to materialize behind him. Speaking of Whis, he thought. "Hello, Naru." Whis looked at the destroyed training ground before sighing. "Again?" he asked. "Is it that much of a surprise at this point?" asked Naruto. "No, I suppose not," said Whis as he began to fix the landscape with his scepter once more. "Anyways, I came here because I have a special task for you," he stated. "Okay, what is it?" asked Naruto, curiously. "There seems to be a problem in Otherworld," said Whis. Naruto raised an eyebrow. "Otherworld? What's going on?" he asked. "There seems to be a problem between Otherworld and HFIL according to King Yema. Someone might be trying to escape. For what reason, we don't know. So I decided that you should be the one to deal with this matter," finished Whis. "Why me?" asked Naruto. "You could think of it as a little test. This could be your first real mission since you arrived, and I'm sure you are eager to test out your strength, right?" explained Whis. "Well, you do have a point. I do want to see how strong I've gotten in the last few years." "Okay, I'll do it," said Naruto. Whis smiled. "Excellent. Make whatever preparations you have to. You'll be sent to Otherworld in a few minutes," said Whis. Naruto nodded before warping away. A few minutes later, Naruto warped back in his standard outfit. "Are you ready?" asked Whis. Naruto nodded. "Alright, let us proceed to Otherworld." Whis tapped the floor with his scepter and the two warped away. And up to Otherworld. Otherworld. Naruto and Whis rematerialized right in front of King Yema's desk. Naruto looked around the area. It was a lot larger than he expected it to be. The room he was in looked like it could hold hundreds, possibly thousands of people his size. "So, this is the one who will help us out?" asked a loud, booming voice. Naruto turned around and looked up, staring at a large, red-skinned humanoid man wearing a purple suit and orange tie. He was also wearing a hat of the same color with two horns on either side as well as an emblem on the center. This was King Yema. "Are you King Yema?" asked Naruto. "Yes, I am. You must be the one Whis was telling me about," said Yema. Naruto nodded. "Alright, I'll leave you two alone. Good luck, Naruto," said Whis before he warped away. Naruto turned back to King Yema. "So what's the situation?" asked Naruto. "Somebody down in HFIL is trying to escape. We don't know for sure who this person is, as there are many candidates as to who this might actually be. I need you to go down there and stop them from escaping, explained Yema. Naruto had a thoughtful look on his face. Who could be the one trying to escape? If King Yema is this worried about it, then this might be tougher than I previously thought. So all I have to do is find out who's doing this and stop them? Naruto asked. Exactly, responded Yema. Okay, so how do I get down to this, HFIL? Asked Naruto. Just go outside and jump off the edge of the snakeway. Once you fall through the clouds, you'll land in HFIL. Good luck, said Yema. Naruto nodded and walked past the large doors of King Yema's office and made his way toward the edge of Snakeway. He peered over the edge to see where he might land. Unfortunately, he couldn't see anything past the sulfur yellow clouds that shrouded the area down below. Not wanting to waste any more time, Naruto leapt off the edge and fell for what seemed like ages, right into the clouds. After another minute or two of falling, he finally fell past the cloud line and saw the area down below. So this is HFIL, he thought. Naruto landed on the ground smoothly and began looking around. The skies above were now the yellow clouds as opposed to the pink shade back on the top of Otherworld. He looked around him observing the landscape. It was mostly just a rocky landscape with some crudely shaped mountains in the distance. The only noticeable thing in the area was this fountain and small pool area not too far away from his position that was filled with blood-red water. Naruto walked towards the fountain area and stopped by the edge, wondering how he was going to find his target. This place is massive. If I'm going to find this guy, then I'm going to have to search the AR. His train of thought was cut off as a massive key signature flared behind him. He quickly turned around and saw a bright, yellow-green sphere of ki pulsating around someone. This must be him, he thought. The sphere began to die down and he assumed his fighting stance. The light finally died down, revealing just who it was that escaped from HFIL. Naruto suddenly went wide-eyed. It can't be. In front of him was a man responsible for millions of deaths throughout the universe. A nearly 15 feet tall, muscle-bound warrior. The progenitor of the Uzumaki clan. His ancestor. The legendary Super Saiyan, Broly. That's all for now. If you enjoyed, then please like, share and do comments.